Hello there. I've been wanting to make this video for a while. I don't have a script written down or anything. This is all from the heart, really. I wanted to address the generational aspect of my work. I wanted this video to be sort of a message to my family. I'm not suggesting that my family watch my videos, but it wouldn't surprise me if every now and then they sort of stick their head around the door on my channel, and if they do, I'd like this to be kind of an introductory video. And for those who are just active witnesses and who might just be intrigued as to why I'm such an outspoken activist, I'd like to put forward some of the main reasons why I'm an activist, what drives my passion to, raise awareness of what Watchtower is doing and help wake up Jehovah's Witnesses. This all kind of came about, my idea for this video came about recently when I had a conversation, it wasn't a conversation, it was an email exchange with a family member. And it was the previous generation of my family, so it was actually, I'll say it was one of my uncles. And this family member obviously is a Jehovah's Witness, but he is intelligent enough to realise that it's not the truth. He's intelligent enough to have, joined all the dots quite a long time ago, and realised that none of the claims made by the Watchtower Society stand up to scrutiny. And with this in mind, I approached him because I needed some help, and I kind of, basically what I wanted was for him to try and alleviate some of the burden on myself and on others in my family who are from my generation, and who are basically trying to untangle the mess that we've been left with by previous generations getting involved with the witnesses. And what I was basically looking for was a bit more support, a bit more solidarity, just an arm around the shoulder, and perhaps speaking out every now and then when we're criticised, to say, well, no, hang on, this is the next generation of our family. They are just as much entitled as we were to make decisions about what their beliefs are. Leave them to it. And things didn't go well with this uncle of mine. He was actually quite critical of my activism. And his criticism seemed to hinge around the notion that it's wrong to criticise religion. He's not religious, but his attitude was that it's wrong to criticise religion because it gives people hope, it gives people solace, it's something for them to cling on to. And if we criticise any form of religion, then we're really untangling things for people, and we could end up doing more harm. And I touched on this in a previous one of our podcasts. In fact, I think it was the first podcast. My answer to that logic is to say, well, if your grandmother is being swindled by a con man who makes her hand over all her money for a life insurance policy that doesn't exist, just so he can have all her money, if you do research on this person and you're able to expose him and show your grandmother that this guy's been robbing her, you wouldn't expect your grandmother to turn around and criticise you for spoiling her illusion that she was going to get a wonderful payout, or her family were going to get a payout on her death. No, she'd be angry at the person who'd been robbing her. So it doesn't hold true for me that by exposing a bunch of fraudsters, a bunch of religious con men, somehow I am to blame for their lies. It just doesn't make any sense whichever way you look at it. But this was the argument that this person was putting forward. And probably deep down he knew it didn't make sense, and I wonder whether he'd kind of concocted this argument to make him feel better at his passivity, at his refusal to even start trying to undo, the mess that Jehovah's Witnesses have done in our family. But the whole kind of intergenerational exchange, because that's how I view it. For me, it wasn't just me talking to my uncle, it was me talking to arguably the most intelligent and thoughtful member of the previous generation of my family. It was an intergenerational exchange, and it was very sad for me to see that, almost as a spokesperson for that previous generation, he was not just passive, but evangelizing his passivity. He was wanting me to be as passive as he is, and allow this this monstrous cult to get its tentacles into yet more generations of our family. And it was quite upsetting, really. It did upset me for a number of days. And where am I going with this? I just feel it's important for any family members who are watching to understand that, it's one thing for you to embrace a flawed religion. It's one thing for you to say, well, I may not agree with all of it. Arguably, the governing body aren't God's representatives. Arguably, not everything they tell us is true. But what harm can there be in believing this, or in at least pretending to believe it? It's one thing to have that approach, but what you're ignoring is the next generation. What you're ignoring are the children that you are bringing up, not to believe this as something that is optional, not to believe this as something that may or may not be true, but as unquestionable fact. Unquestionable fact based on which they should dedicate themselves to an organisation as young as possible. This is what really, really winds me up, and what really makes me feel passionately about my activism, is the idea of this legacy that we pass on to the next generation. Are we passing on a baton, an opportunity for them to run forward and expand on their horizons, make something of themselves, explore their potential? Or are we passing on a poisoned apple? And I believe that if you indoctrinate the next generation in a harmful cult, you're giving them, as I said, a poisoned apple. You're scuppering their potential. You're weighing them down. You're snapping a ball and chain around their ankle and stopping them from making something of themselves, contributing something to humanity, which is what I believe life should be all about. It's about helping others and just pushing humanity forwards, even if it's just a little nudge. It's just pushing humanity forward so that the next generation and the generation after that can be more comfortable, more educated, more literate, more understanding of their universe than those that went before. That's what, in my view, that's what the purpose of my life is about. I'm not going to say it's the purpose of life, because that's no one can say what the purpose of life is. That presupposes that life has a purpose. Anyway, this whole idea of generational legacy was really driven home to me by quite a poignant experience I had. And it was while my wife and I were shopping in Zagreb. And it was actually before Jessica was even born. So I was, and I absolutely hate shopping with a passion, especially clothes shopping. I'm probably a typical male in that respect. By the way, why don't they put seats in clothes shops? You know, men want to sit down, they're bored stiff, at least let them sit down. But no, you're not going to have seats in a clothes shop. So anyway, I went outside the shop and I was sat on the bench facing the shop so that if my wife needed me for anything, she could just come to the door, or once she'd finished, we could move along. And I was sat on this bench, and I sat on the other side of the bench. I think it was behind me, there was a group of girls, teenage girls who were chatting. And I don't normally eavesdrop on conversations between teenage girls, but on this occasion I did, because they were talking in English. Bear in mind I live in Croatia, so it's quite unusual for me to hear people around me just in everyday life talking in English. And the conversation was basically about, one of the girls had been to the Youth Olympics, which I think were in Singapore, either that year or the year before. And she was gushing about what an amazing experience she'd had. She was really thrilled about the time she'd had and the experiences that she'd had, and she was passing on some of these stories to her friends. And it just got me to thinking about how obviously I was expecting Jessica, we were expecting Jessica at that point, and it made me think, you know, gosh, I really hope that one day Jessica is able to talk to her friends in that way about, you know, fulfilling some dream, doing something that she's really set her heart on and she's managed to achieve it, and, you know, having something that she can be proud of when she's a teenager. But it also got me to thinking about the next generation, and it made me sort of contemplate the fact that when we do this sort of activism, I say we, I'm referring to myself and other, you know, ex-cult activists. It made me think that or realise that when we do our activism, when we share information about the cults that we've been in, and we try to educate people and, you know, raise awareness, what we're doing is we're not just awakening, in my case, Jehovah's Witnesses. We're not just awakening ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who've perhaps been disfellowshipped and spent years indoctrinated, and only after watching a video or reading an article have they started to realise that they were in fear of Armageddon for no reason. We're not just helping those people, and that would be something worth shouting about from the rooftops. Look, we've managed to spare these people from their, you know, indoctrination and fear. We're not just helping those people, we're helping people who haven't even been born yet. We're helping the children of these people who could get born into a cult if it wasn't for the fact that their parents watched some video or read some article. And bearing in mind how intergenerational Jehovah's Witnesses are, because the whole premise of the society is set around the family and indoctrinating, you know, young children as early as possible to make them the next generation of Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, I can't think of anything more poetic, more honourable, more worthwhile, more satisfactory than not just helping people, but helping people who you've never met, can never meet, and who may not even have been born yet. Because I refer to the next generation. There will obviously be children alive now whose parents would be Jehovah's Witnesses at some point if it weren't for activism. But I get most excited when I think about those who haven't even been born yet, or maybe children, you know, maybe one or two generations down the line, who have been spared being brought up in this cult due to activism. That's what really, you know, gets me going and spurs me on to do this work. And because I find the whole child indoctrination element of Jehovah's Witnesses grossly immoral and selfish. And this is another one thing I want to say to my family. Do you not realise how selfish it is to suggest that because you were conned into believing something, to suggest that because you were raised with a certain set of beliefs, therefore your children should automatically have those beliefs too? I understand you won't view it as selfish. You'll view it as, oh well, we're doing them a favour. We're giving them the best possible start in life. No, you're not. You're giving them the worst possible start in life. You're closing off their horizons. You're stifling them. You're blocking their potential. And I can think of few things more selfish than half knowing that you've made a mistake, because let's face it, most witnesses have doubts about what they believe. Whilst having these doubts and half knowing that you've made a mistake, I can think of few things more selfish than insisting that your children, that your grandchildren, that your great-grandchildren must repeat your mistake, must make you feel better by sharing in the folly, sharing in the misery. It really upsets me when I think about it. And if you're a member of my family watching this video, especially a member of my family who is currently indoctrinating the next generation, please, please, please just think about them. Even if you loathe me or loathe what I'm doing, or think I've gone crazy, or think I'm mentally diseased, I don't care. Do it for them. And if you can't do it for me and you can't do it for yourself, make a stand for them, because it's really not fair what you're cursing the next generation with, what you're cursing your children or your grandchildren with. It's just not fair. They don't deserve it. They deserve to have a blank canvas. They deserve to explore our universe with no presuppositions, to understand the universe based on evidence, based on things that can be verified, rather than what some group of men in New York have dreamt up at a meeting. Outrageous. And I can't talk about it too much because I get too upset, but hopefully I've made myself clear. I've made my point clear that it's not just about us. It's not just about our husband, our wife, our mother, our father. Yeah, great, they were raised as witnesses, practicing the religion themselves. They may feel like they're not doing any harm, fine, but if you're going to throw away your lives to a cult, that's your business. Don't you dare try passing it on to your children or grandchildren. It's immoral. There's no other word for it. So I hope I end all my videos this way, don't I? I hope I've given you something to think about. It is worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about a heck of a lot. It's not just about us. That's what I'm trying to say. And we owe it to the next generation not to give them a poisoned apple, but to give them a genuine opportunity at making something of themselves, at pushing humanity forward, which they're more than capable of if you give them the best possible start. So that's all I have to say, and as always, thank you for watching.